Well, hello. Welcome, everyone. My name is Director Dominique McGee of Breaking Chains nonprofit organization. And welcome to the Anti Human Trafficking Awareness Month segment with your girl. I am so happy to be able to bring this segment to my community so we can get a little deeper into a real conversation that we need to have. So, as we get into the anti human trafficking awareness, we all hear about human trafficking, and it's a thought. What does that have to do with me, my community, or my family? Well, everything. It has everything to do with you, your community, and your family. The more you are aware of the dangers and the possibilities, the more you can equip yourself with the proper tools and information to, if you see something, you can say something. Get involved in the movement in protecting those you love and those in your community. So let's get into it. So, we're going to discuss pimp culture in African American communities. What is this? What is it about? Well, your girl brought her notes. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. And I'm working on a couple screens here. So, if I'm not readily answering any of your questions, please give me a little bit of grace. Okay. So, let's get into it. I am survivor leader Dominique McGee, also the director and founder of Breaking Chains nonprofit organization. And when I say survivor leader, that means, yep, I am a survivor. In early years of my teenage years, I had experienced human trafficking, which derailed my life and took me into the dark side of living the life autonomously, meaning I was having to dance and live in this dark life for a very long time after I got out of the clutches of my own trafficker. But that's not for this segment. Let's get into what is this pimp culture in our African American communities. And we can describe it as an idea of sexual violence, fraud, conversion, or force. And when you hear these things, fraud, conversion, force, let's stop there for a second. A fraudulent opportunity when we are in a bad state, a bad place, financially, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, even sexually. We can put ourselves in a position to be handled in a fraudulent manner. Meaning, someone can see your disparities, someone can see your circumstances and situation, and see that as an opportunity to capitalize on you, on your pain, on your circumstance, on your situation by presenting a fraudulent opportunity. Telling you they can change your life situation, they can help you earn money, they can change whatever circumstances or situation that you are in. And sometimes these opportunities are way too good to be true. Housing, food, clothing, for nothing. Hmm. But as we get into it, let's get into it a little deeper. Coercion, getting talked into, manipulated into doing something that is against your moral judgment. Being manipulated by your feelings, by your circumstances, by your situation, by past trauma, becoming preyed upon. Yeah, that's what we're discussing. Now, force, outright force, taken by force, beaten into submission, used by, even if it's a substance, if you have a habit. There's a lot of different ways that this can happen. Familiar, someone you know taking advantage of you through fraudulent or opportunities, or through coercing you into doing something that you know is against your moral judgments, playing and manipulating you, or absolutely taking you by force to do something and into a lifestyle that is not who you are. Before we get into the whole pimp culture thing, to survivors and other victims, I want to say you are not what happened to you. And you do have a voice, and you will be heard. Don't be afraid to speak out. So, as we get into what is this pimp culture in African American communities, why is it so accepted? Why is it so normalized to a degree? When we look at pimp culture and the way that it encourages the image of being something desirable to our youth, when we look at the depiction of a pimp as a teenager or a young male, is it appealing? Is it something that looks like they would want to get involved in from the outside, with their understanding that if I was a pimp, I would have money, I would have jewels, I would have the girls, I would have the flashiest clothes? And also, what is this pimp culture? Once again, I'm going to keep saying that. Now, this pimp culture is passed down from pimp to pimp, generation to generation. And it is a code. And in this code, it is taught how to break down women for your profit, for your benefits, how to make them solely depend on you mentally, emotionally, financially, get her to believe that she cannot and will not succeed or be able to do it without you. In this literature, you would find that in the pimp culture, these specific individuals who have built this code and packaged it perfectly in a book or in files or in word of mouth from pimp to be mass distributed as a way of life. And when we look at our community, we come from many different forms of ways of life in one community. And I want to say this, to be honest, because you got the gangbang life. You have the drug trafficking life or drug hustling life. Now you have the playboy life, the player, the pimp, the one who sees his avenue of income from people. I'm going to sell other people. And by that, it is a well-oiled, structured machine. So when we look at this well-oiled, structured machine and we like really get into it and say, what is this? I would like to say, in a community full of disparities, with little access to betterment, to opportunities, to educational advancements, to really get ahead in life. Because there is lack of access to these things, what do we have access to? self destructive ways. Drugs, any environment of oppression creates the context where abuse can thrive. Because either you're going to prey on or be preyed on. Because it's in the course of survival. So when we look at those in our community that go after the playboy, the pimp ways, they take hold of a structure that they're above and the woman is below, and that they are property, and that they are to use their body to make their profit for the pimp. And this comes with a lot of manipulation. This comes with a lot of abuse, physically, mentally, emotionally, sexually, abusing nonstop to gain control. It comes with isolation from those that you love. So when we look at, oh my gosh, all of these things can happen, and it can even come in the form of a relationship. A pimp can watch an individual, study an individual, and find their way in that person's life. There's a phrase that is said, I'm looking for who's looking for me. And there's a lot of us young African American and other women who don't have what we need to have. A solid support system, a safe haven, help, assistance, therapy for prior abuse, whether it's childhood abuse, rape, or molestation. We don't have the self-confidence, self-awareness. A lot of us don't even have the understanding or knowledge of how to get to the next level in life. We're growing up, we're becoming adults by numbers, but not mentality, not abilities. We're coming into adultship without the proper knowledge, tools, support systems, and so forth to take care of ourselves. And that might be hurtful to a lot of us when you hear me say it like that. But no, it's not our fault. I want a lot of us to understand it's not your fault if you're growing up without the proper foundation. It's not your fault when you have already been crossed by those that were supposed to protect you and support you. It's not your fault that you just had to grow up in a hostile environment and now you're figuring it out. And I'm not just saying this on the victim standpoint in the African American community, but also on the young players, aspiring pimps, and the old head pimps. Now, coming from a community of pick your direction, because this is all we got. School is promised. It's not like you're really going to get where you need to go. Some of us are dropping out early, and getting attached to the street codes. And as we get attached to the street codes, we're picking from the pot, or we're picking off the tree which one we're going with. Whether it's, I'm going to go to the gang for support, I'm going to go to the gang for family, I'm going to go to the gang for belonging, I'm going to go to the gang and trust in the gang to lead me, or I'm going to go into the drug game to provide, I'm going to be a hustler to make it, or I'm going to be a player. Now, there's many more. You can become the jackman and all of these different things, but it is how it's presented to all of us in our communities as victims, as young girls who are being over sexualized at a very young age, not getting the support you need through prior abuse, rape, or child molestation. This goes for young boys and girls, not having that space to speak about what has happened, but having to grow up with this trauma inside of you, feeling like that's all you're worth. Now, back to that, I'm looking for who's looking for me. There is a predator who is looking for these type of individuals who have been touched, who have been abused, who don't have direction, who may be facing homelessness, who have habits, who do not have a solid foundation to stand on from the beginning, let alone know how to navigate through life's challenges, personally, mentally, physically, financially. This is how this culture began to thrive and take root and make money. This human trafficking industry has surpassed the drug industry. It has surpassed the arms industry. When I'm talking about guns and ammo industry. But we can date it back to slavery. We can date it back so far and say, yes, women being sold and prostitution has been around since the Bible days, such and such, so forth and so on. But we're discussing here the African American community accepting the pimp culture. And to a degree, blaming the women, blaming the victims. That's their life. That's what they wanted to do, or that's how they wanted to do. No one woke up today and said that I'm just going to walk a track without being put in a situation or circumstances that led them to that. When we look at the pimp version as the anti-hero that has relatable conditions such in the hip hop community. When we look at our music, for generation after generation sexualizing the woman. What are we saying and speaking about our own women? What as women, what are we accepting and speaking on as well? From generation to generation. We're not having this conversation with someone who hasn't lived this life. There is more women pushed into the I have to do what I have to do. In our community, there is more young boys and young men and that have been through so much traumatizing situations that introduce them to the game. Whether it's coming from a parent who was in the game or exposed to being homeless and having to do what they have to do. There's a lot of avenues that expose our community to the pimp culture, to the prostitution culture, and opening up to human trafficking. Now, let me say this. When it comes to commercial sex, and that is someone who is of age making a sound decision to do what they have to do, which means sell themselves to survive or for whatever reason. That's not trafficking. That's not what I'm discussing here. I'm discussing when you forcefully, when you fraudulently or you converse another into going against their moral code, abusing them physically, mentally, emotionally, sexually for your own gain, not the gain of the person. Now you have entered into the lane of trafficking. A lot of pimps in our culture do not even associate themselves with being a human trafficker. When we speak on human trafficking, they don't understand that we are talking about them. So here we are today as we are discussing the awareness, to raising real questions about why the African American community is over sexualizing the young girls and the women. Why we are okay continuously after generation okay with the pimp culture, making jokes and cartoons and movies and so forth about it, but not really honing in on what's going on. Now let's get into some old numbers. I want to give you some old numbers as I get into this. Okay? Because I want to talk about some things first. Before we get into it, I want to stop right there and get into back into this. In the Black community, there has always been this thing where we don't talk about what happens. What happens in this house stays in this house. You are Your abuse is easily dismissed. Probably told that you are the reason it happened. You caused it upon yourself. Immediately dismissed as a victim and told that no one's going to believe you. And if the abuse starts in a home of in a familiar home with family, or those close to your family, and you speak out, you are then cast out and ostracized from your family because you chose to stand up for yourself. So within this, we breed abuse within our families, within our community, within our homes, generational abuse. The whole family knows the abuser and no one has anything to say. Because the abuser is often the favorite of the family, or the well-known friend of the family, whatever the case may be. We don't really have, from generation to generation, we don't have that safe space where we can get healing. We can get into safety. We can get into a supportive place. But continuously growing around predators will put you in a mind state of, I can't tell anyone. No one's going to help me. So you begin to accept this lifestyle of allowing people to abuse you. And that comes, and it's like, I want to say it like this because I'm going over my notes and I really am trying so hard not to offend anyone. But this conversation, we really need to have it. Sexual abuse, assault, harassment, rape, all of these things happen often. Often. But in our communities, we have a that ain't none of my business attitude. We have, what did such and such do to cause this? We have a no snitching attitude when it comes to assault. When it comes to abuse, we turn to whether it's domestic violence, we don't get involved. Whether it's sexual assault or abuse, somebody screaming, somebody raped them or did something to them, we're not actively trying to get this person to safety. We don't really have resources for therapy, for our mental health, support systems in place, safe housing or environments that we can go to. So we as a community are allowing the pimp culture to thrive as much as we are allowing abuse to run rampant through our community. And that is the truth. And it's crazy because we use terms in our community to dismiss what really goes on. Being turned out, oh, she just turned out, or he was turned out. That is not an acceptable justification of someone being abused. Predators running rampant with no justice for the victim. Generations through generations. And now we're looking at an hypersexual generation right now. Nobody's safe. Not the boys, not the girls. None of our youth are safe. And I'm coming from the 80s, growing up in the 90s. I wasn't safe. Those before me weren't safe. So when I sit back and I'm looking at what is going on in our community and why are we allowing this? Because it brings money. It makes you look official. Rappers rapping about sexually abusing people, dropping drugs in the drink and enjoying them. That's rape. That's rape. We laughing about it. We talking about it. We looking at all of these things that's going on into the rap game now that is coming out. And we're looking at people who we listened to growing up. And now they're coming out the gate saying they were abused sexually. They were forced to do certain things and we're looking crazy. But are we doing anything about it? We're looking crazy. After, as a community, we have allowed this to go on. So today, I really want to say that we are self-destructing. We cannot blame this one and that one when we are not actively protecting our community, but we are actively working against the betterment of our own community. We're not saying anything if we see something. We're okay and parading around this pimp culture and hypersexualizing of the women, the degrading of the women. We're not building proper services and resources within our community to build up the man and the woman. Because the thing is, if we have all of this for the victims, how are we going to stop the predators from creating more? We have to give them a better way of living all the way around. We have to be in the center of change if we want to see it happen in our community. It starts with each and every one of us. We don't need some big pageant or some big event to discuss world peace if we want world peace. We don't need to have this widespread thing if we want change. It starts with each and every one of us. Be a part of the change that we want. If it's not acceptable, not in our homes, not in our schools, not in our communities, it's not acceptable. We have to draw back and understand that we have allowed this. We have internalized it. We have accepted it as our own. Yes, we hoes. Hey, no, not at all. There was a time we had shame because really deep down we know that's not how we feel about ourselves. Yeah, I'm a player. I'm getting to the money, but you don't have a 401k, a house, nothing. You're not what you see. I don't care how many diamonds you got dripping down your neck. This is not it. We have lost respect for ourselves and each other. That all of us are prophets in the worst way. We're not looking at our children and seeing that they are victims in this. The men need to be looking at their women as something they need to protect. Someone they need to protect. Same thing with us when it comes to our men. Preserving the family. Not the sickness in the family, but the family. Breaking down foundations that are not healthy. Speaking your peace. This is the season that we are in. Now let me get into the numbers. The old numbers, I'm based in Houston, Texas, which is the hub of human trafficking. Now, when we look at the human trafficking numbers, it is said, now I'm waiting for the updates because I know it's much larger since 2023, 2022, 2021. I'm sure that the numbers are larger because the disparities are higher. Predators are risking it all boldly in the music industry, in our communities, on our streets, in our schools, in our homes. And we're sitting back because we have internalized and accepted this culture destruction. Human trafficking, pimping, prostitution, sexual molestation, and rape. The numbers are 313,000. 313. Every year experience some sort of sexual trafficking in Texas. 313,000 people a year experience some sort of trafficking. This is insane. So you mean to tell me every year almost 500,000 people are being trafficked? Because 313 ain't too far from a quarter meal. And when we look at the numbers now, 41% of these are underage African American girls and boys. My God. If we don't wake up, if we don't sit down and say, okay, no longer will we accept this as our culture. When we dismember and do away with the player and the pimp culture, when we dismember and do away with the whole culture, the acceptance of the whole culture. When we do away with being silent and start taking people to jail for their wrongdoings to us and our family members in our communities, breaking people's reputations, because this will not continue, not on my watch. So as we continue on in our anti-human trafficking awareness all throughout this month, I want you to sit down and say, where can I do better? If you see something, say something. Reach out. There is many different people going through so many things. And I want to stop right here and say, you are not alone. There is help. And if you need it, reach out. Because I'm going to go to war for you. Hey, I'm going to go to war for you. So, African American community, what are we going to do? Because it's not enough for us to watch it happen with Diddy and Cassie. I'm going to name them. I'm going to. Because how many others are we waiting to come forward? How many of us have been sexually exploited by our spouses or someone we thought we were in a relationship with? How many of us have been manipulated and used because we couldn't get it right, because we had habits and other things going on that we need help with? How many of us have been fraudulently coerced into circumstances and situations that were life-threatening? Presented opportunities that we never would have thought we would have made it out of. How many of us are sitting silent about our own abuse? It is our time, in our season, right now, to make a difference in our community, to dismember the player and pimp culture, to dismember the acceptance of hoe culture, and to be there for our victims and survivors, building resources in our community to aid in the growth and development, personally and professionally, of those who need us the most in our most underserved communities, which happen to be ours. I'm petitioning each and every one of you to get involved. And it breaks my heart that I have to sit here and have these conversations. Because the truth is, there are families who need you. I'm not going to cry. There's families who need you. And you may be a family who is in need. When I tell you, you can make it. And things will change. Don't give up. Now is the season to fight for betterment. For the victims' families, for the survivors' families of abuse and trauma, for our at-risk youth and our young adults within our communities that need that push. That is why Breaking Chains is here. Because we're breaking generational chains. We're breaking chains off of our lives, off our children's lives, and off of the future of our legacies. No more trafficking. Not on our watch. Say it with me. Not in our homes. Not in our schools. Not in our communities. And not on our watch. Thank you for your time today. I look forward to speaking with you all again tomorrow as we get into what is it when you see it, how to handle it, and the resources available to those who may need it. And when I say what is it, that means how do you get involved in the anti-human trafficking movement? What is it? What is it about? Who is it for? How do you get involved? If you see something, where do you say something? Come back, we'll discuss it tomorrow, and we'll get all the resources together so you know that you're not alone. All right, community, let's get it together. You heard. Once again, thank you for your time.